friends. Welcome to episode 361 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 19th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook, on Threads and Instagram. You can find me at School Librarians United and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Today's episode centers around a brand new book, A Sense of Place, School Libraries at the Heart of Learning, Connection, and Belonging by Byrd Little, and published by Bloomsbury. I reached out to Bloomsbury, and they very generously offered a 20% discount to anyone using the promotion code UNITED20. That's 20% off the original price using the code UNITED20. See the link in today's show notes. And now for today's episode, A Sense of Place, my conversation with author Byrd Little. Friends, I'm so excited. Byrd Little, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Amy. I am so excited to be on your show today, and I'm quite appreciative for the invitation. That's very sweet of you.
I truly believe that when we have something to share with others, this is a great place to start. And thank you so much for writing your book. I read it on my flight to Denver a couple days ago.
Yay.
And it was absolutely, I was having so much fun. And so I'm excited to talk with you today. Hannah, would you introduce yourself and tell us about your work in the field of school librarianship?
My name is Byrd Little. I'm Hannah, and I have been in libraries for 29 years, so a long time, right? I spent 7 years in university libraries, and then I interrupted that, and I was actually in the travel industry for 7 years. And wow, that ended abruptly with September 11th. And so I went back into university library, spent a few years there, and really made a deep decision to go into school librarianship. It was what I considered a calling, really, and I feel like it's my last career, hopefully. I don't know. We'll see.
Just because I'm dying to know, what did you do in airlines? I'm curious.
So I was actually in consultancy, and I worked for a Japanese company here in the U.S. that helped Japanese executives with their travel and relocating to the United States. And in Tennessee, Japanese executives would come over for 3 years at a time, and they wanted to travel to every place in the United States that they could while they were here. So,
wow.
yeah.
So very much the service industry, and in some ways, much like being a librarian, you're providing resources and information and doing that on behalf of others. It tracks. It absolutely tracks.
It was deep research, and learning about all the different locations that they wanted to go and everything. So,
you know what? Again, working with the needs of your clients and making sure they have what they need to make informed decisions. This makes all the sense in the world. Absolutely. So, I'll confess, your book, A Sense of Place, School Libraries at the Heart of Learning, Connection, and Belonging, caught my eye last fall when I was working my way through the expo hall in St. Louis at AASL 25. I was at the Bloomsbury booth, and I picked up your book, and I saw that you were the author, and I believe I just sort of held the book out and said, I would like to record this author for my show. And they're like, sounds great.
Oh, gosh.
Awesome. Yeah. So absolutely. And Bloomsbury's been really fantastic. And I've had a lot of fun interviewing authors. Anytime you're a school librarian and you write a book, I'm in awe. I'm in absolute awe. I have to ask, when you were conceiving of this book, did you have that light bulb moment, or is this something that slowly sort of built to sort of a crescendo and you finally just pushed you into a place where you had to write it?
Yes, there absolutely was a moment where I was invited to my husband's holiday party and I got that stupid question. So, do we really need librarians anymore? Sip the wine. I mean, since we have the internet and all. So I held my tongue. I did. But, well, and it was realtors, right? So it was like, I could very well have said, do we really need realtors now that we have Zillow or something like that, but I didn't. I didn't say any of those nasty things that were coming to my mind. And I was gracious and I was like, I have to write this book and it has to be interesting to people outside of librarianship. And I hope that it is. I don't know. We'll see.
When people are like, why do we even need librarians anymore? And it's like, first of all, were you raised in a barn? Are you not aware of how unkind you are being right now? It's, you really are revealing how uncouth you would be to insinuate such a thing. Even if you thought it, all right, be a little more tactful in your questions. Good on you for not retorting. Take the high road. But, truly, I am very grateful. And this was a really great read. And I know that listeners are going to have a really good time listening. I did check. Bloomsbury offers a 20% discount right now on their online orders. We have a United 20 discount code, which if they don't offer the 20%, you just say, hey, United 20, and that will get you the 20% off the book as well. So no, I'm very grateful that you did this. Let's jump right now, because I noticed both in the introduction you wrote as well as Appendix B was the importance of visiting school librarians and how those experiences have profoundly shaped your held attitudes about the many purposes that school libraries serve in their communities. And so, this whole idea of visiting other people's libraries has clearly had a lasting impact on you.
Absolutely. And librarians are natural sharers, right? And we share with one another, and I've been invited to so many places, and I take every opportunity that I can to visit a library. And I always, always, always leave with an idea. I leave with an idea that I can implement right away in my library. Something easy sometimes, something complicated. And there's such a culture of generosity among librarians, and I appreciate that. And most of my tours of libraries have been all across the U.S. I do hope one day to get across the ocean and do a little bit of international library visits. But also, I think the next couple of years, I'm going to focus here in Tennessee because I haven't visited enough libraries right here in my own backyard. So.
Wow. Well, and again, I describe myself as a tourist. When I go into other people's libraries, I did a really fun thing. My district allowed me to go and visit another school library. And so this was years and years ago. And I picked a friend of mine who was not close. It was easily a 45-minute drive from where I was. I didn't care about the drive because she was an amazing librarian. And friends, it was Carrie Betts. And this was years before she and the library would receive the National School Library of the Year recognition from AASL. And she and her principal went to Tampa to receive this designation, this award on stage. And it was really exciting. I was like, I went to her library years before because I knew it was an amazing library and I wanted to learn so much about it. And friends, I will put a link in the show notes because that was just fun because I was like, of course she won. I've been to that library. Of course it deserves to win. It's an amazing space. So yes, I was like, prediction. I figured it out first. All right. So visiting other people's libraries, it does factor into so much of the observations and those that you incorporate into your book. And I find it to be very powerful because it's because you were there in their space that you could appreciate firsthand just how important space is when you're trying to create a program. The timing of this book is incredibly relevant. You ask yourself in this book, why this book and why now? And I felt that the writing was really compelling, and it felt like there was an urgency to your writing. Like I could feel it really, there was a great deal of urgency in how you were bringing this message across, not just to librarians who would pick up this book, but to an administrator or somebody who truly does not understand just how important our library programs are to their school, and then looking at it through the lens that you took was really compelling.
Yes, definitely. I wanted to convey the urgency. I felt like it was important. I had heard too many stories of school librarians, their space being completely removed or it dwindled down, that sort of thing. So I reached out to one of my old librarian friends who is now an admin, and I was like, okay, what will get admins to read this book? And his answer was, it needs to be short and to the point. I was like, okay. That's saying a lot. But I definitely wove in that personal storytelling. I tried to evoke the nostalgia. I interviewed my parents, for goodness sakes, for the book. I interviewed the architect of my building, which my building is 33 years old. So he was an older man now. And just trying to get his memories of why they built what they did and why, when back in 1993, right? So it was a long time ago. But now I have like language for that storytelling because of an episode you did with Wendy Prey. So she talked about like poetic inquiry, and she talked about
Yes, autoethnography. Friend, did you watch her dissertation? I got to watch Dr. Wendy Prey, defend her doctoral dissertation and her autoethnography. And friends, you better believe that's a future episode because I cannot wait to talk to Dr. Prey about her exploration and how this journey, how it was so unique in the program. And I was absolutely riveted. Yeah, Dr. Prey will be on the show hopefully very soon.
Very good. Well, yeah, so she gave me sort of language for what I was trying to do. I feel like it's the real story of me and my library and all of that sort of thing. And I call it the red thread, and there's so many things throughout the book. And whenever I asked Joyce Valenza to read it, that was the one part she really liked, was the storytelling and the red thread, I think. So
excellent. You called upon some amazing people to give you guidance and to see this project to its fruition. That's fantastic. So let's go ahead. Perhaps it is fitting that one of your first chapters is devoted to something we all encounter when visiting the library, but perhaps have not given it its due. And that's the library entrance. I was stunned. I was like, what? Wait, we're talking about, and all of a sudden I'm walking into school every day going, we're talking about the entrance. And looking at this with new eyes going, oh, I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about.
I feel like I went to a manners class when I was a kid, and they would tell us about how to clean the house, and companies coming. And what you do is you go outside the house and then you come in the house and see what the entrance looks like. And then I was like, felt bad for my mom because, there were things everywhere, And so I helped her clean up the entrance of the house, right? But I will say that first impression really is important for all of your constituency and your patrons. And I have a lot of patron groups. I have parents, I have alums, I have community members, because at times I've been open to the public in my tiny little town. So one of the things while I was writing the book, I listened to my library's copy of Marty Sklar's One Little Spark. And he's a guy, like one of the original Imagineers at Disney. And so that really got me going with the entrance part too. That first thing that you see is the Cinderella castle, right? When you're at Disney. So anyway, I highly recommend that book for librarians. I don't know.
We'll put a link in the show notes, friends. It is important that when we are constructing that invitation when people walk into our space. Obviously, if there are some things it's hard for us to control because oftentimes these things are designed without us and our input. I got to be honest, most of my memories when I was walking into a library was walking through the scanner that would beep if you left with a book without scanning it. Now, this was in the public library for sure. But I'm thinking that is kind of off-putting, actually, when you realize you're like, I'm going through a detector to see if somebody steals something. It's like, that's not quite the messaging I wanted coming into this space.
That was definitely one thing that the librarian before me that helped design the building that I'm in, she definitely did not want that. She did not want the security, is what they used to call it. I don't know if they still call it that, but anyway.
Yeah, no, and I'll be honest, that's never been a factor in any of the libraries I've ever worked in. Thinking about our spaces, not so much as like when we walk into it, but when our patrons walk into it and when their families walk into our spaces. And what is it, I'm acutely aware when I know that the Board of Education is going to be coming for their annual meeting or their monthly meeting. They rotate which space they use. And when it's our turn, I was like, oh, good to know. And I'm trying to like clean up and pick up and the lost and found needs to be relocated because yes, lost and found.
Oh, lost and found. What do we do with that?
No, but it's friends, it is worth contemplating. What does somebody think when they walk into your space for the very first time? Are they assaulted by, I'm trying to think about is it chaotic? Are they, does it look like institutional white? I mean, what are they seeing when they walk in? And you want to sort of make sure that leaves people with a positive impression for sure.
Yeah, you definitely want to create invitation and wonder. If the kids can feel that, you want them to feel that open arms. This is the place to be.
So one of my favorite chapters is chapter 4, A Place of Inspiration. You call upon the importance of marketing and tactics used by familiar retailers. And this is not the first time we have mentioned marketing and our libraries on the show. And it's worth mentioning because at some point it is a sales pitch because we got to make sure that people are seeing our spaces as valued parts of the school community.
Yes, reading and literacy, they need that active promotion all the time, right? And I was blessed to have 2 marketing experts that I got to interview for the book. And I'm hoping I'm saying his name correctly, David Vinjamuri. And he's based here in the U.S. And then also I interviewed Kevin Henna from Australia. And they were both great at, giving me advice about marketing in the library and how the space, the setup, all of that helps with the marketing, the retail strategies, the library displays, all the kinds of visibility type things in the library.
Absolutely. And, there is a great deal of intentionality. I think that we need to choose, and we don't need to overwhelm. We don't want to assault our visitors with too much, but we want to make it a space that is inviting, less institutional, and more like the school's family room.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and for that reason, I know that a lot of librarians do try to create some sort of theme to their space. They like to see warm and inviting, and, as in not much the same way that teachers try to create that kind of ambiance in their classrooms. We just have a scale issue. We just are dealing with a classroom that oftentimes makes the typical classroom seem quaint.
Yes, it's not just a classroom bulletin board. It's a space. It's massive, right? Or at least mine is, and I know I'm incredibly blessed with an 11,000 square foot facility. So it's insanely large, right? And so trying to fill that space with marketing is a challenge. It really is. Of course, I'm a bit of a minimalist, so I do like a cleaner look. But, everyone has a personality that they bring to their library, and I think that's fine. There is that thing as far as being overwhelmed with too many choices, as you said. And I think I mentioned that maybe a little bit as well, as far as the decision making and things like that. So
Sure. Well, and it is also for a lot of our students, they do also like a little element of predictability, because they want to feel like they're, I know with those of us we have routines, and a lot of our students, and in some cases our students who are atypical neurodiverse, those students do exceptionally well when there is a routine that they are able to have in that space. And I know when I work with their paraprofessionals and with their teachers, oftentimes this is a space for our neurodiverse students where they can find a space within that larger space that is their comfort zone, their space where they feel most at home and at ease. And so I will be honest, we're going into state testing this week, and it is so disruptive to our students' workflow. And whether you, regardless of the age group that you support, when you decide that we're going to stop everything and start doing something as hideous as state testing, it is interrupting what is most familiar to our students and their workflow and their routine. And this is their home away from home. And you start interrupting it with, oh, by the way, we're closed. They're like, what? You can't close. Where do I go? And I'm like, I know, I'm going to figure it out.
It is hard. It's hard when you have to deny the students for other things, for sure.
Absolutely. So you challenge the reader to ask themselves, how well do you understand the needs of the school community that we serve? And that's such a profound question, because if we don't fully appreciate all the aspects of how this space that we oversee is going to be utilized, we may be falling short of providing what those users need, especially if they're coming in after hours and we're not there.
Yes, for sure. So my library is open 13 hours a day, I think. So we have night hours. So I have a shift of workers that work at night, but I'm usually there probably about 11 hours a day. I probably need to come back a little bit, but anyway. So observing all of those things, the students, the teachers, what they need, the gaps that we have, those are important things to think about. And the library really needs to reflect its people in the library. And I really think that that's important. And I want my students to know that it's their library. As we celebrate School Library Month this April, right? I am celebrating my students because it's their library and I want them to have it for the future and I don't want it to go away.
We have one of our skills classes, and one of the teachers came in and said, do you have any jobs in the library that our skills students could could do to build some of those, responsibilities. So we'd like to build in some work routines with some supervision. And they noticed that on every one of my tables is a plant.
Yes.
That's alive. That requires watering.
Same.
We have built in our skills classes, which come in and assist with the watering of our plants, with the washing of our tables. They take a wipe and take a wipe to all of our tables. I schedule those right before the staff meetings. Yes, we make sure that our skills classes know exactly when those tables have to be spick and span. And we also, our skills class has taken it upon themselves to do the laundry, because we have if you can imagine, like a Moses basket of blankets. In a space as large as ours, it gets awfully drafty. And if you are not dressed for the weather and the draft, you may find yourself uncomfortably cold. And so I have brought in a whole bunch of remember we were going through those fleece blanket stages where we would tie the fringe. Okay. I found a ridiculous number of blankets, which I could absolutely just bring to school, fold into a basket, and the kids would help themselves if they found themselves chilled. And it gave them a sense of cozy, But one of our teachers said, how about why don't we work with our skills students to wash all those blankets for you every week?
Do they have a location on campus to do laundry? Oh, nice. Uniforms, probably.
Absolutely, because we have a skills class where they have to learn how to work appliances, kitchen appliances, and including laundry. And that is absolutely something that I'm here for it. You know what? I think it's a wonderful way to allow the students to be invested in the space, but also recognize that there is, in order to keep the space available and nice for everybody, including the adults who are going to be having their meetings here later in the day, we want to make sure that everything looks nice and is ready to go. So I'm absolutely happy. Sign me up. You need to create jobs for our students. It is about having that sense of emotional investment in the school's family room.
For sure. I know I have tablecloths that have to be washed on a regular basis. So I was like, that's a good idea.
What struck me was when you challenge the reader with questions like the ones you asked on page 70, we need to be intentional and have these things on our radar, first and foremost, to prioritize accessibility. And I know that there are people in our building who will come through and make sure, hey, we've got some students who are going to need some accommodations and some accessibility issues. Let's take a look and see what we need here. But as the professional in the space, we need to always be mindful about accessibility and our students.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually have some accessibility accommodations that I use for myself. And one of the things is I don't type well. For a writer, that's catastrophic, right? But I use a lot of voice to text, which has been flawed for the longest time, but AI has actually made it much better. And I'm from the deep South, and my accent is bad. I mean, not bad, but you know what I'm saying? It's strong. My accent is strong. And so I am happy for technology that solves accessibility struggles. So that technology helped to make it possible for me to write a full book. But my priorities is always for my students, for them to be comfortable, that I am open and that I will be open to their suggestions anytime they have a need, that they'll feel free to come and ask me for those things too. Not just the accommodations that I know about, but the things that I don't know about, right? And I always want it to be that welcoming environment for that. To do all of that, I try to learn the students' names as much as possible. I feel like I have probably 90% of my students that come in, their names. And I like to know their reading preferences. I like to make sure that I'm open before and after school and recess and all the different times that we have that are open times for students, that we're always open as much as possible, especially those kids that are not welcome other places, right?
I had a really interesting visit the other day from people I did not recognize. And they introduced themselves and they said, we're actually from the middle school special education department. And you've got students who are coming here starting next fall. And we know about their mobility issues.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to see all the spaces that are rising ninth graders. So these are eighth graders coming to the ninth grade. We need to see the spaces that they're going to maneuver through and how accessible they are. And it was fascinating because they were familiar with the student who was coming. I have no idea what's going on. I'm watching them and they're looking at like how much room there is between furniture, and they're looking for ramps, the fire escape, where do we go for emergency, those kinds of things. But it really was an opportunity for me to appreciate that not only do I need to be ready for my current students, I need to be able to know that we will always have an influx of new students whose needs I may or may not be aware of. And I want to be able to always be sensitive to the fact you don't arrive at this isn't a done. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you don't get to go, oh, well, I'm done with accessibility. Check. You're like, no. Because the kids are always coming.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So, yes, we just have to get much better at being able to, that UDL, Universal Design for Learning, right?
Okay. Yes, for sure. And I do know that I talked a lot about user experience in there and universal design. And I will say, of course, I have a colleague that calls me worst case scenario, Hannah. I'm a really, really positive person. Like I'm a Pollyanna, like to the core. But like when I go through my library, I'm like, that's a trip hazard. That's a fire hazard. That's all those things come to my mind whenever I think about accessibility. And I don't know why that is exactly. But anyway, he's like, some kids strung a cord from one side to the other, right? That they do that a lot, right? And, there you go.
You also mentioned supporting patrons with sensory sensitivities. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. And we absolutely have students whose needs are very specific. And this has a lot to do with lighting and sound and how being able to work in a space where they can feel comfortable. I know that we've got certain corners that are occupied by our students because they like to be able to feel that enclosure, but not be closed in. And so, we really are trying to make sure that we support all of our students in the way that they are best served. And this is one, and I didn't want to become defensive about this. You mentioned creating a sense of belonging, quote, especially those who may feel unwelcome in other areas of the school, unquote. Okay, I was like, wait.
I hope that's okay to say.
I was like, no, but this is important, right? You're doing these self-checks. Like I'm reading your book and I'm at 30,000 feet and I'm like, do I do this? Do I do this? Wait, I don't know. Wait. Am I that person? Am I okay? Because I've been very candid, friends. I've married somebody who I am married to him still, and he's colorblind, and yet I genrefied my fiction with color stickers because they're what I had in the cupboard. I had free, how you always want to use the free stuff that the person left before you, right? And they were all color-coded stickers. And I was like, oh, done. I don't have to buy color-coded stickers. Get the whole thing genrefied. 2 years later, I was like, oh, my husband's like, is that red or green or brown? Or I was like, oh my goodness. So
I've done it too. It's not just you.
So yes.
Yeah, we've done a lot of those things.
Well,
yeah.
And again, I go over this again and again. I was like, I want to be able to support all my students. You can't just say that. You have to say, okay, but do you support the ones who do not feel necessarily welcome in other space, in a traditional classroom setting. I mean, and I'm thinking about some of my students who self-stimulate, who need, you know what I'm saying? And I want to make sure that when I have students who need a place where they can have a certain amount of movement to their daily routine, but also feel that they are not being judged and that they are safe. I mean, again, we got to support all our kids.
For sure. I mean, like the stimming, I'm a wrecker, and having soft furniture is so important, right? And I know that that's not a priority for a lot of schools, and financially it's expensive, right? To provide some of those soft chairs. But yeah, it definitely trying to make those spaces welcoming.
And institutional lighting. There's nothing quiet and, serene about the institutional lighting or the institutional walls painted ecru or mother of pearl or whatever it is. Yes. So no, we definitely try to be as accommodating as we can. I am stumbling to answer this question from chapter 9, and this one is not new. Their school librarians have wrestled with this. Quote, can collaboration and quiet exist in the same space? Question mark, end quote. Page 97. Friends, I have seen librarians, they've got zones. This is a quiet zone. This is a social zone. This is a space where we can listen to things out loud. I've seen some librarians use a green light, red light, and a yellow, a space that's allocated for social groups or group work where you're going to have people who are talking. Some people have really fancy like Zen rooms, or I just have a room with great insulation. So when my students are recording, I'm just like, oh, you're going to go over there. Close the door. We won't hear you at all.
Well, for sure. I've tried all of those things. I've been in my space. This is my 19th year. So it's a long time, right? In the same space for sure. The zoning thing, it works in ways. I had signs on certain tables and the kids kept moving them to different spaces. They were like, no, this is not the quiet zone. And so they would take the quiet zone sign, move it over to what zone they wanted it to be. And I even have like a calming area. And I swear my 9th grade boys who have not really grown into 9th grade brains or whatever you want to call it, they goofballs, I guess is the big word that comes up a lot with them, but they go into the calming zone and make a lot of noise. So there you go. But yes, it's hard.
The shenanigans. Yes. But I think that there's also, I've noticed, and this is my year 5 in my space, that I am becoming more and increasingly more aware that when the students are telling you what they want, we should be listening. Like they are telling us what they want. When my students started taking naps because they got to school at 6:55 in the morning and they're just going to, sleep until first bell, I'm like, I'll bring blankets. I see what you're trying to tell me, and I want to be helpful. I'm going to be when you show me with your actions within reason, I'm going to meet you there. When my students needed to film because they're making films for their video class, we're going to try to dedicate a space that isn't going to be used for anything else. I don't know. I mean, we're just trying to be as supportive in their journey through this space. And so
yeah, there's no solution to that one.
No.
I don't know. Well, I do have a section where there are partitions and quiet rooms and all kinds of things that you can have if you have budget. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the big thing. Like a lot of us don't have the budget for things that are extra, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but intentional design is important.
Absolutely.
And hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that we can be very clever. And I think we are not only willing to imagine repurposing spaces, I think we've also recognized that just because it's been done a certain way doesn't mean we can't upend that and take take some leadership in saying, I appreciate this is how we've always done it, but I think there's an opportunity here to reimagine how this particular area is being used. And if we have that opportunity, I think we absolutely need to pursue it, because oftentimes it's that, I call it anecdata. Like when you watch the movement of the students, and they're moving the furniture because they like it a certain way. I know Diana Rendina talked about this, and studying the movement of students and what they're doing with the spaces they occupy. You're like an anthropologist. I'm just going to watch it and say, yeah, maybe that furniture should just go like that, instead of going and fixing it every day because the kids move the furniture. Why don't you see why they're moving the furniture? Because actually, it works. It really does. It's a lot like if you've ever raised children and you've given them free range in their own bedrooms, and you walk in the first time and you go, wow,
yes,
that's clever. What did you do? But it's also their space, right? It's their space.
Yeah, for sure. I know. My kids, oh my God, they took my own kids, and in our house, I gave them free range in the bedroom. I did it. What do you do? Anyway, and they took a deck of cards that had puppies on them, and they scotch taped them to the walls. The whole deck of cards. Yes, it's okay. It's fine.
Absolutely.
It's fine.
Look, if it doesn't involve paint, count your blessings. Count your blessings. It didn't involve paint. All right. So I am going to say, I was flying home from a weekend spent in Denver, and I read my all-time favorite sentence in this book. It's on page 117. It needs to be broadcast at all our meetings, and our administration needs to realize this and reflect it somehow in our communication to our teachers. Quote, "The unique challenge is that no other teacher in the building or campus is asked to completely reset their classroom almost every day," end quote. I'm going to cross-stitch that onto a pillow, because I absolutely am trying to get everything to look right and realize, you know what? I'm not going to reset the room because people moved stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. When I left on Friday, Grandparents' Day, balloons everywhere, right? Yeah. I don't know why we did balloons, but we did balloons for Grandparents' Day. There's a lot of balloons. Still balloons in my library. Anyway, so there you go. But I have a faculty meeting at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, which I needed to set up for. And on Thursday, I am having a senior research symposium in both my main floor and my classroom. So I had to set up for that today too, because I have a very busy, Tuesday and Wednesday. So there you go. It happened today. And that's I think the classroom space had to have 40 chairs, I think, in audience style. And then the main floor had to have 100, I think, for the faculty meeting and the symposium. Yeah. So a lot of, and then the Grandparents' Day was insane. Maintenance came and helped me with that. So I think I had 10 tables that we set up in addition to our library tables. Yeah. So
Wednesday and Thursday, we have state testing. And yes, all the tables have to be facing one wall.
Yeah. That looks like, something out of
they have to be a certain distance
my
apart.
Nightmares.
And then when they set them up, they don't want kids to move
so many inches
them.
Apart.
And so they just let's just close the library. I was like, okay, I'm going to stop you right there. You don't treat it like one room. It's 7 different learning spaces. And I'm on my spring break, and I'm like, I am texting my testing coordinator and trying not to come across as being too, demanding. But I'm like, we don't need to close the library if we're not testing. She goes, well, I don't want anybody to move the chairs. I'm like, okay, so why don't we close just those rooms? Why don't we still allow for other students to occupy the space? I'm going to be there. I'll make sure nobody moves those classrooms. We'll put a little caution tape across the door. Nobody can go in those particular spaces. But no, I mean, we are the biggest advocate for our space. And we're advocating for not just the things in it, but the opportunity that we have to use that space. And when you write this book, and it's like this love letter to the place where we work. And I was just, I think to me, I felt so connected emotionally to what you were saying, because, if you've ever taken that kind of emotional leap and allowed yourself to just sort of feel that ownership for that physical space and realize how dependent it is on us to make sure that it is always loved, and trust that we're going to make sure that this space is going to be available for all of the students coming through. And you've seen so many students come through, and I know for many of us, you've seen the children of your students come through.
I have. Well, and one of my colleagues was like, wait till you see the grandkids. And I was like, no. I will be retiring. The first grandchild that walks through the door, that is when I declare retirement. But I definitely have seen some children of my former high school students come through for sure.
But it also, I think we also can say, and I'm not going to point fingers at any particular spaces, but I know it's also true that we've probably walked into a classroom or two that was not loved, and it was not cherished, and it was not a space. I think about the classrooms you walk into with the teacher who's been there for a decade or two, and it's just lived in. It's lived in, and it has all the ephemera and all of the pictures, and it's a room that truly reflects the person who has worked in that space, loved their job, and this is their home. It's their home away from home, and they're going to make it another wonderful space in the school. And then we had this one classroom, and I'm sure everybody's got this. It's kind of where the temporary teacher gets sent. Like, you had a Johnny come lately, the school year started, and then somebody came in. It wasn't a room that was originally meant for them. It has the furniture that doesn't match anything. It's very haphazard. Nothing in there actually works, because it's where things are either, whether a chair that doesn't work completely gets thrown in there because the chairs that work have been taken out, and we think about this as like, this room has not been loved, and it is our job to absolutely cherish the space for which we are responsible, and we prioritize it above anything else. And this room is something that we take that kind of ownership from, and it's going to break your heart, because at some point somebody won't show it the kind of respect it's due, and we have to make sure that we are very controlled in our response. We don't fly off the handle, but we also want to make sure that this is a wonderful space that we are responsible for maintaining and allowing each class to come through and enjoy.
Yes, definitely. I do recall my daughter talking about her favorite teacher in high school, and it was one of those classrooms where it was absolutely loved by the teacher, and he took such pride in his classroom. But so much of that ownership, it causes this invisible labor that we put forth. And so I do encourage librarians to, for sure, get help when they need it, if possible, from students, from maintenance, from custodial care. I love my custodians, and I try to treat them very well. Yes, I love my custodians because they take care of the space too, and they are some caretakers along with us. So
well, and you know what? I think that when the students see how invested we are in the space, I think that it does translate. I mean, I think that you get kids who are going to be mindful about picking up the trash, and mindful that we do not leave things on the ground. That we're trying to instill in them a sense of responsibility for the shared spaces. And the library, I think, is truly a showcase space because it is utilized by our entire school community and larger community. When we have people who come in from, that's our voter base. That they're going to be voting for that millage. They're going to be voting for that school bond. So we oftentimes are the place where when kids and families who are new to the school go for a tour, guess what's open?
For sure,
absolutely, but.
We're about to host an alumni reunion.
Oh,
it will be
amazing.
soon, so.
Well, sure. And, oftentimes when families take tours, the library is one of those spaces that gets included on every tour, simply because it is an opportunity to show off a wonderful space that supports so many different needs. And, the home, I tell them it's a home away from home. It's the other family room that they have, that they come and hang out and be with their friends. And so, no, but I love that your book reminds us of how integral we are to that space. And I just am noticing Blake Hopper wrote the blurb on the back. Friends, Blake Hopper's been on the show quite a few times. Absolutely. And, I love that I recognized more than a few people that you called upon their expertise. I went through your index and I was highlighting all the people who have recorded episodes. And then I was highlighting and forgive me, but I actually took a couple screenshots and I was sending them to friends. And I said, hey, did you know you're in Hannah's book? And it was wonderful because I love when school librarians are your experts.
When it comes to many of the things that I was researching along the way, particularly accessibility, was Barb Paciotti. And I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. Her blog is amazing, and there are so many details, and it's a person that I would love to meet in person one day. So there you go.
Yes. So Barbara Paciotti, if you're listening right now, Hannah is going to include her contact information in the show notes. But friends, we're going to make sure to include Barbara Paciotti's blog linked into the show notes because, friends, it's disability accessibility in the school library, looking backwards, and she has a blog which I will make sure to link in the show notes. Hannah, you are amazing. I'm so grateful for this book. I'm grateful that Bloomsbury was willing to allow me an opportunity to ask you some questions about the process and what you did to put this together. I know a lot of school librarians would also find your insight tremendously beneficial. Would you let us know what is the best way to reach out to you if we want to?
My most used social media is Instagram, and I do have a link in the bio there. And I do have a website, librarianlittle.com. So
librarianlittle.com. All right. Fantastic. Friends, I am so energized when I talk to somebody who recognizes just how important the librarian is in the library. So Hannah Byrd Little, you are fantastic. Would you, hopefully, we're heading into the spring. I've got to imagine that in your hometown, spring has already sprung. And I know we just had freezing rain and it's been downright. Michigan it's going to take us a while. But Hannah, thank you so much. And I am so grateful. And we, I hopefully are going to cross paths in the future. Is there any chance you're going to Chicago for ALA?
I do plan to be there in Chicago. So yes, it's my last service as Director at Large with AASL. So this is my last meeting as a board member for now. So.
All right. Well, and hopefully we will cross paths. Thank you so much, Madam Director. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you in Chicago.
Sounds good.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. Don't forget, you can order Hannah's book and receive 20% off using the code UNITED20. See the link in today's show notes. If you're curious to know how often your state or country has been featured on the podcast, then simply click on the link, which can be found in our show notes. Search title, author, state, and country, and do a Command F search. I hope this is the year you consider being a guest on the show. Please visit the FAQs in every episode, and you'll realize just how easy it is. We all have something to share. Make 2026 your time to shine. Friends, I'm currently juggling several outlines and tentative recording dates. You can be sure our upcoming episodes will showcase amazing school librarians sharing their strategies and resources. I hope you will tune in.